I learned in high school. It's a wonder I can think at all.
Welcome to Picture This, Tampa Bay's only talk call-in show devoted exclusively to photography. Hosted by Jeff Donald and myself, Lou Donald. Welcome to Picture This. Jeff, how you doing tonight?
Good. Yourself?
Great.
Yeah, good. You've had a busy weekend.
Little bit.
Yeah, so what were you doing yesterday? I know what you were doing. Some of the listeners probably don't. So
Probably most, I hope.
Well, yeah, that could be. But, you know, some of the movers and shakers were there.
Yeah.
They probably saw you. So what were you doing yesterday?
Yesterday we were shooting as volunteers for the Abilities Foundation at their fundraiser at the Largo Military Museum.
Right.
And there were about 20 of us from the Florida Center for Creative Photography shooting the event.
Great.
Wonderful time, great people to work with, and we provide those photographs for the Abilities Foundation to use throughout the year in their fundraising.
Yep. And they do some amazing work. They're a 501c3, and I know there were a lot of sports celebrities there, and local high rollers and things like that were there to support the Abilities Foundation as well. So I'm glad we could be there, and I want to give you my personal thanks for running that little show, so to speak, for the Florida Center. And we do that every year. So you've got yourself a full-time job now, taking care of that. But, and I was busy, too. Friday night, we had a kind of the last of a long line of things. One of our activities that we do every month, we shoot pictures. I lead a free photo walk, and when the full moon rises, and so the night of the full moon, it rises at almost the same time the sun sets, and it makes for some very dramatic pictures. And we were down in St. Pete by the St. Pete Pier, which is about to be torn down. We don't know what's going to go up there, whether it'll be the lens or these other, the citizens are trying to have some input and force a referendum on what will be built there. But this was obviously the last full moon for the pier being lit up. They light it up at night, and the businesses are lit up on the top and things like that. So it makes for some very dramatic photographs. And this past Friday was the full moon, and we had a group of about, I think we had about 60 people RSVP'd for it, and probably 40 to 50 photographers showed up. So it was we were spread out all along part of the park and the beach there, Spa Beach they call that, and we had a great time. Went up to Cha-Cha Coconuts afterwards, and had a great time up there shooting the downtown skyline and everything. So passing of an era, though. We just won't be able to do that pier anymore, and that's kind of sad, but we've got some great photographs to remember it by. And you don't have a website this week.
I don't.
You couldn't find any more obscure British photographers for us to look at, I take it. So, I might suggest maybe some Eskimo photographers for next week. Maybe you can find some Eskimo websites that take pictures we can look at. But my segment, I've got one that we're just doing one this week. I did two last week to make up for a shortage. But this week in photography history is a photographer that's that I really enjoy talking about, and he passed away May 23rd, 1954, and that is Robert Capa. And Robert Capa was considered one of the leaders in bringing war photojournalism to the forefront. And he was also a founding partner of a photo agency called Magnum. And Magnum was it was the first of a kind. Prior to that, all photo agencies, they were owned by basically advertising companies. Magnum was more along the lines of a co-op. It was owned by the photographers themselves, so they didn't give up a huge percentage of their income back to the ad agency. The photographers really profited from it. But Robert Capa, was really the first modern war photojournalist. And he's most noted, probably his most famous picture was taken in 1936 during the Spanish Civil War, where he captured, of course this was black and white, he captured the death of a loyalist in the Civil War at the exact instant he was shot. And they were charging down a hill, these soldiers, and carrying rifles, and Capa had kind of, the angle that he was at, he captured this soldier falling. And towards the latter part, over the last 10 years or so, this has been disputed that he captured such an instant where he was killed. And so they dug up, there were some independent researchers, went through a lot of archives, found, Capa's negatives from that day, analyzed the people he was with and the stories and all this stuff, and they finally came to the conclusion that, yep, he did take that picture, amazingly enough. But so that's the famous picture he's noted for. But throughout his career, his next big assignment, of course, was World War II, and he was one of the few photographers. I think there were 4 who landed with the Allies on D-Day when we landed in Normandy and started the European invasion that about a year later led to the defeat of Nazi Germany. And so he had all this film with him and all of this, and shot all this stuff. And then by special courier, they got it back to the labs to be developed and sent via wire so that it could be published right away. And I don't know the whole particulars. Yeah, they often refer to it in the history books, so to speak, as it was an intern that had processed the film, and in his haste or desire to get this done so quickly, he was under this pressure that they used too high a heat to dry the negatives, because when they come off the developing reel, they're wet. And so you can't print them or anything yet. You don't know what you've got. And so they used too high a heat, and literally all of this film melted except for about 4 or 5 exposures. And that was it. There's 4 or 5 frames left.
And they were damaged.
And they were damaged, but enough that they could print them. And so you'll find evidence of that online as well. But just an amazing photographer. He's most noted for a quote that I use a lot in the workshops that I teach, which is, if you don't like your pictures, you're not close enough. And I also, preface that, or finish up that story, I should say, with the fact that Robert Capa died by stepping on a landmine in Indochina, what was become Vietnam, and passed away. So, I joke about maybe he should have used his zoom lens or his telephoto that day and not gotten quite so close. But just an amazing photographer. We only have about 20 years of his photographs from the early 30s to 1954. And Magnum has gone on today, and it's still in existence. And his brother Cornell, who is also a photojournalist and photographer, of course, carried on, and he just passed away a few years ago. But amazing photographer, and passed away in 1954. So.
Well, for people new to photography, when they look at his pictures, one of the things to remember is those guys didn't have big, powerful telephotos the way we do today.
Right, absolutely.
That part about getting closer was true.
It is. I mean, and it's the whole concept of fill the frame with your subject. All too often when I look at beginners' pictures, and probably some of that, if we were to look at some of the beginning assignment photographers that did the abilities thing, probably some of them, they're a little hesitant to get close to people. You don't want to invade their space or do this kind of thing. So you end up with the subject being way too small. And effectively, it's a boring photograph because the viewer looks at it not knowing what's going on and looks at it and says, why do I care about these people? Yeah. What is really going on? And moves on and on. And but fill the frame with your subject, and that goes a long way towards having an exciting photograph. So that is This Week in Photography History. We should get the phone numbers out there because we've got a contest going on, and we're going to give away a piece of software tonight. It's called a plug-in. But well, a little more about the contest in a second, but let me get the numbers out there for folks. We'll give them again in a minute.
So write these numbers down so you can get in the contest.
Yeah, there's no email winning of this contest, but you don't need to have a question to call in. Anybody can call in and win. So, and we'll let you know when to start calling, too. So in Pinellas County, the number you can call in on is 727-441-3000. Toll free, 866-826-1340. Now, if you've got a question for us tonight, we'll certainly take that right away or what have you. But we'll let you know when the contest is going on. If you want to email us a question, we welcome your questions at picturethis.questions@gmail.com, and I'll be checking those. Some of you have been texting me. If you know my phone number and want to give me a text, you can try that as well. I know Anthony, one of our photographers from Lakeland, was a big help last week, texting some information to us. It's kind of like having a little bird in your ear feeding you all this data. So I certainly appreciate that, so we can keep everything straight, get the facts straight. So, but if you got a question for Lou or I, give us a call
or email.
Yep. All right. So what are we going to talk about tonight, Lou?
Well, that's interesting because we a lot of times have picked a particular topic, and tonight we did not pick a particular topic.
That's right. We're going to wing it.
So we were talking at dinner a little bit about several things, the camera business and some trends going on there. And we talked a little bit about some interesting cameras.
Yeah.
Which is always something that I think a lot of photographers like to talk about is cameras.
Yeah, it's the gear side of things. Yep, absolutely. Well, I think the camera store thing was really interesting. And, because both you and I have had a career in retail.
Yeah.
And certainly the camera store retail side of it, but other industries as well. So, I think what started our dinner conversation was a phone call that I received this week, and it related to events going on at B&H in New York, and they're effectively in this industry kind of the 900-pound gorilla. There are very few single retailers, well, probably no single retailers that can compete with their marketing power, their sales ability, and everything else. And I think you had an interesting point about why that is and some generational things.
Well, and, one of the things when I was young and used to buy camera magazines, and the back of the camera magazines were just loaded with these mail order ads.
Yep.
And a lot of off-brand stuff and very cheap prices and cameras without U.S. warranties and all these different things like that, and kits made up of no-name lenses, whatever kind of scam they could come up with. And people got to be very leery about sending a check to these mail-order places.
Oh, yeah.
And what's happened now, which is difficult for local smaller retailers, is the B&H's and the Adiramas of the world have established a reputation for reliability and honesty in what they sell, that the younger you are, the more you've already been buying online, and with certain people like B&H and Adorama as the two biggest that I know of,
yeah.
People aren't afraid to order from them. They know they're going to get what they were promised.
Yeah, and that truly has shifted momentum. And even though many of us want to be loyal to local retailers, it becomes increasingly difficult because the buying power of B&H, they can stock so many items. And it is frustrating to walk into a local retailer and say, hey, I've been reading online about this XYZ camera, and it's not Nikon, it's not Canon. And so, that's almost like the retailer's worst nightmare. What do you tell these people? There's all these great reviews. So if you're a retailer and you go, oh, really, that camera's not all that good, you cast doubt on your own ability,
credibility.
because this guy has read 6 raving reviews from major publications, and you're telling him it's not such a good camera. That kind of reflects poorly on the business. What did you worked in retail. What was Dodd's line on that?
Well, it depended on the item.
Yeah.
The one thing that could immediately say to that person, I don't have it on the shelf.
Sure.
Let me see if we have it in the company somewhere, because Dodd's always had multiple locations,
yeah,
and a big commercial store.
Right.
So when they were looking for something that was perhaps a little higher-end pro-type gear that may be out in the suburbs, you didn't have it, it was downtown.
Right.
I can get it for you. I'll have it here tomorrow when the truck comes in.
Right.
And the other thing is, the company that I worked for was large enough that they could get anything.
Yeah. This had the special order.
It was very rare that they couldn't.
Right.
Once in a while, some new company would come up that made some widget that they had never dealt with.
Sure.
So that could be a little more difficult. You have to,
set up an account, and go through all that stuff.
To order one $20 item. That could be a little more difficult.
Yep.
But that ability to special order and get anything is a difference. And that's where a relationship and building that rapport with customers, the key there is how long it's going to take.
Yeah. Are you willing to wait for it?
Are you willing to wait for it, and calling up the buyer downtown, and how long is it going to take you to get this?
Right.
Well, I can have it for you in 3 days.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Mr. Customer, we'll have that for you by Wednesday or whatever.
Yeah.
So there is a way around it, but it does require having built a relationship to begin with.
Right. And, I worked for, some pretty small stores, smaller than you did. I worked for a medium-sized chain in Cincinnati that has since been, bought up. But
By Dodge.
no, it wasn't Dodds.
No,
it was the guy out of Columbus.
Okay.
Cords.
Cords bought him?
Cords bought Pete's Photo World. Yeah, but our line was.
I know who it was.
Yeah, our line was. Pete himself. He handpicks the products that we deliver, or that we sell.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't personally like that camera, then we won't sell it. And so it was kind of hokey, but it kind of worked because Pete had been in the industry so long locally that he had developed this immense trust. And he did a radio show similar to this. And he was well known in the community. And it's like, well, if it's not good enough for Pete, then gosh darn it, I don't need that camera. Sell me a Nikon. So it was an interesting concept. But, the way we played it off kind of worked. But still, not everybody can do that, especially if you're a single store location, which is the Tampa market, and they just got to be willing to work with the customers. We should talk a little bit about our contest that's coming up. And I'll give the phone numbers again in a minute. But what we're going to give away in a little bit, there's a company called Topaz.
Yep.
And they make plugins for Photoshop Elements, and Lightroom. And they have a new plugin out called Clarity. And they're doing a couple of free webinars this week, starting on Tuesday. They've got one on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 1 on Friday, where they're going to teach people for free online
how to use it.
Those will be recorded. You can go back to them, watch them later. But they've given me some free copies of Clarity, so I want to thank Topaz for that. And we are going to be giving one of those away tonight. And it's regularly a $49 plug-in, and so it's going to be up to the fifth caller. Don't call yet, but the fifth caller will win themselves a free copy of Topaz Clarity. The numbers we'll want you to call in on when we open up the phone lines for that will be 727-441-3000 or toll-free 866-826-1340. The email question line or question address is picture this dennis.questions, plural, @gmail.com. And we don't really have a question that came in, but we have a something that we should applaud, I think. We were talking earlier about the event at the pier, and I'll flip this around so you can see it. I'll ask Dennis if he'll let us put it on the Facebook page tomorrow. But it's a picture of the moon rising at the pier. And Dennis emailed a copy of the picture to me with the notation, and he says, this is my Photoshop composition. So he freely admits he Photoshopped this giant moon in. And if he'd have shot it with a 1200 millimeter or longer lens, it probably would have looked like this. But and he says, and it made it to the number 8 position of the top 1,000 most popular images in SmugMug today.
Wow.
So number 8 out of 1,000 is quite an accomplishment.
That's really good.
Yep. My congratulations, Dennis. That's a wonderful shot. I know you just retired recently, and you got some new Nikon gear that you were using. So congratulations on all of this. It's a wonderful shot, and with your permission, I'll email you later tonight to see if we can put it up on our Facebook page, or have you post it there so you can get the accolades it duly deserves. So, yeah. So, anyway, back to the camera store business.
And it's tough.
Yeah.
I was reading an article by a guy over in England.
You read an article by a guy in England. Why doesn't that surprise me?
And he's an editor of one of the magazines that I read.
Sure.
And he talks about growing up, and over there they had a chain which was rather similar to what in this country was Ritz.
Right.
And they had multiple
that's
stores.
Jessop's.
That's Jessop's.
Yeah.
And Jessop's used to, in the old days, when you walked in the door,
Yep.
they would hand you a fine print list of all kinds of items and what their price was.
Yeah.
Just daring you to go someplace else that they would have the lowest price.
Mm-hmm.
And he said what they often did was, go into Jessop's, get that price list, and then see if the local guy was competitive.
Right.
And the same thing is, and one of the things that happened is, I don't know if it was around Christmas time, shortly before or after, something like that, Jessop's, like Ritz, is no more.
Yeah, they went out.
And bemoaning the, what we call Main Street in this country, they call High Street over there.
Right.
Bemoaning the loss of the High Street camera stores.
Yeah.
And but yet admitting that when he was young, they were doing the thing against the high street camera store, going to Jessop's, getting the cheap price,
right.
And sometimes going to the local guy, looking at the camera, and then driving to Jessop's to buy it.
Well, and that's the next thing that's happening right now in retail, which is, and this has been going on with Best Buy for several years. Best Buy has become, what it's commonly known in the industry is they are the showcase for Amazon.
Yeah.
Walk into Best Buy, have your app that will scan barcodes, and scan the barcode and see what you can get it for on Amazon, and you can buy it right there in the store. Yeah. So, and of course, say not only is it cheaper, but you won't pay sales tax.
Right.
And so, of course, there's a bill now in Congress, and this is the first time in a decade that this bill has a very
fair chance,
probably better than fair.
Yeah.
And the Republicans will really decide it, because some of them are saying one of these big conservative watchdog organizations, I forget the name of it without looking it up, who they kind of monitor this promise that many of the Republicans have signed on no new taxes. And so this group has come out and said that this would be a tax. And other Republicans have countered that, no, it's not a new tax. Sales tax has been around for a long time, and all we're trying to do is level the playing field for the local, small, Main Street merchant. And so this is quite controversial, depending on which Republicans go which way. will really decide if this bill passes or not. But I just noticed that this past week or two, eBay they weren't really on the sidelines. They certainly, they figure it's going to impact their business. But eBay has been sending me emails, and I haven't done business on eBay in 4 or 5 years. And to be getting an email every other day or so about how, if this passes, the internet and all this retail stuff will change. It really demonstrates that these online companies that really have a major stake are now going to throw some money at this issue and some other things to try to defeat it.
Yeah.
So
eBay in particular, I don't know how they would ever deal with that.
Yeah, it would be almost, well, it wouldn't impossible. Part of this bill is, though, that the states have to provide to the merchants software that will calculate the taxes.
No.
So does that mean that if they can't provide software to eBay, then they don't have to collect the taxes? That seems really interesting. And each state would have to provide their own software. Yeah. So that in and of itself could be a potential nightmare. And so these sites may just go, well, we'll try to figure out how to charge taxes on everybody and let them sort it out at the capitals or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see, and we should know in a month or more probably if this is going to come up for a vote this term or not before the big summer break.
Right.
So we don't have too much time. So that advantage to the online merchants might disappear, but in reality they still have so many other advantages that I don't think this is going to level the playing field.
No.
Comparing, so many people, the photo walks that I go on, people will come up to me and they'll go, I was in New York this past weekend and I went to B&H. Do you know that they have a conveyor belt overhead and your packages fly overhead? It's the most amazing thing. I said, yeah, they have quite an inventory control system.
Yeah.
It's amazing, the logistics. They have a huge warehouse that employs, I think it's around 900 people in the old naval yards in Brooklyn. It's just phenomenal operation. You can't say enough about it. And we're happy to have them sponsors of the Florida Center for Creative Photography. So you can check them out on our website. So, what else did we talk about at dinner? We were talking about some new cameras that were out there.
We were talking about, I had read a review on the new Fuji...
Oh, I got to look that up for you.
XF100S something.
Yeah.
Mirrorless camera.
Right.
A new X-Trans, I think they call it, 16-megapixel chip that's new to that camera.
Right.
And it's APS-C sized, so image quality will be very good for a mirrorless camera.
Right.
And it looks very much like an old rangefinder, and it incorporates some interesting features, one of which is that it actually has a viewfinder.
Right.
That's an optical viewfinder. It doesn't focus or anything like that, but does allow you to use an optical viewfinder with parallax correction.
Right.
And that's pretty cool. But the other thing is it is set up to manually focus.
Right.
It is set up to be able to set f-stops and shutter speeds and to be able to, use it manually. But more than anything, on its back screen.
Mm-hmm.
First time we've ever seen this, it has a focusing aid. It's a split image focusing aid that allows you to, as you focus, see that image or your subject come into focus when you line up the lines.
Right. Reminiscent of all the old manual focus cameras. Yeah.
I mean, whether it was an SLR, typically SLRs would have that split image focusing screen. I remember the first time I got a camera with a split image that was so much better than, I can't remember what they called the other one, microprism.
Microprisms, yeah.
And that you just had to kind of judge that it looked as sharp as it could look. It was a little spot in the center.
Yeah.
And the split image was so much easier to focus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the model you're talking about, it's just the X100X.
X100, yeah.
Yeah. Has their, Fuji does their own sensors. So many people are buying. There's only a handful of sensor makers. Toshiba, Sony are the two big ones that people would recognize. Fuji makes their own for some of their cameras. Canon makes their own for some of their cameras. Nikon used to make some, but I think they've actually just pretty much exited the market. I think. I'm not sure.
No, I'm not sure either.
Because so many of theirs come from Sony today.
Yeah.
And but it's got their X-Trans sensor, which in an f2 lens, it's a 23 millimeter fixed focal length. So on an APS-C,
it's about 35. Probably.
Yeah, it's about a 35 millimeter lens, f2. It's got what they call a hybrid electronic and optical and electronic viewfinder. Pretty cool camera, to say the least. And of course, it's all metal construction. Shoots video. It's magnesium body. And what a lot of photographers really, really, really like about this thing is it is looks like an old Leica rangefinder.
Yeah,
it is a really cool looking camera. The potentially not so cool part of it is it runs $1,300, and almost anywhere you go, you're going to find that it is back ordered. B&H is out, Adorama's out, all the major retailers, and so that's an area where the local merchant might happen to have one, and that can sometimes be their saving grace, so to speak.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
you can have stuff that the big boys don't.
Yeah. I think a camera that competes very favorably with that, though, which is just released in limited production this week, is the Ricoh. It's called the GR, and it is a throwback. Ricoh had a GR back in the film era, and so they've kind of reintroduced it as an all-digital APS-C, fixed focal length, a 28 millimeter equivalent. Not an f2 like the Fuji, but a 2.8, and using what is guessed to be one of the high-end Sony sensors, which are pretty much top of the line, and so competing quite favorably at a much discounted price. I think it's $800 retail. So now you're talking all metal construction, magnesium alloy body. But what it's lacking is the optical finder. Yeah. So that has both pluses and minuses. One, it can be significantly smaller. This is a camera that'll fit in your shirt pocket, and the Fuji just won't.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking for a light, compact, really high-end camera, the Ricoh is kind of the way to go, I think. I've been watching this closely ever since Ricoh sent me a camera, and a small digital GRD4, and so this isn't really a replacement. Mine is much smaller, but very similar, but it doesn't have an APS-C sensor, so the sensor's smaller and everything. But that whole product segment is really heating up. Sony has a camera that's competing. Fuji has several cameras in there.
Oh, yeah, that's about the third one that I know of from Fuji.
Fuji is really going after that market. Nikon has the Nikon.
They just call it a 1, don't they?
No, the 1 is the interchangeable one.
Oh,
this is the Nikon A, I think it's called, and but it's expensive too. The Nikon A is like $1,100 or $1,000, a couple of $100, $300 more than the Ricoh. And doesn't do anything different. I think the lens might be a little faster, but and there are several others as well that are competing with that, and it's pretty amazing. If we just jump back in time a couple of years ago, hardly anybody was making enthusiast cameras like this.
Right.
And now almost all of the major manufacturers need to have something in that market, or they're really getting left behind. And Canon is sort of one of them. They introduced an APS point and shoot, but it's ho-hum lackluster and has no traction in the marketplace.
Well, and that's interesting, because for a long time the trend with the smaller cameras was into the lighter, simpler, kind of dummied up cameras, and now you're seeing a recognition that there is a good market for that type of camera, for the enthusiast, for the person who really enjoys their photography and wants a small camera that will give them the image quality.
Yep.
Rather than just, yes, it takes nice pictures, but the image quality is pretty so-so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wonderful that they're recognizing the needs of enthusiasts. And a lot of these cameras, and particularly the Fuji, the X100S, I think partly because of the styling of it, the fact that it has a high-end optical finder as well. Many pros have picked this camera up. Now, some of them are dumping it real quick, still going, well, it's just a point and shoot.
Yeah.
But many of them are hanging on to it who are interested more in the street photography and that kind of genre.
And it is geared to some speed. It'll do 6 frames a second and some other things that you typically don't see in that kind of camera.
Right. We have a question that's been sent in to us by Matthew W. And kind of not really along these lines, but it's kind of related in some respects. He says he has a Canon T3i, and he wants to know, can I change the chip?
No.
And I'm assuming by chip he means
the sensor,
the actual sensor. Can I keep my body and somehow
put a different chip?
Yeah, take this 18 megapixel chip in it and put in something higher res or different manufacturer. Kind of like putting an engine from a Ford into your Chevy or something.
Even more difficult because there is a processor in there,
right?
Which has algorithms that were developed specifically for that chip,
right?
For the characteristics of the chip,
and
they are as matched as can be,
right?
And besides the fact that it would be very complicated in order to get it perfectly straight,
the alignment,
and then in order to get all the connections connected, the real thing is then the processor couldn't really
talk to it. That would be the bottom line. Yeah. Yep. So if you're talking about the sensor, Matt, ain't no way.
Lenses, yes.
Yeah, lenses. Of course, I know. Matt was on the photo walk this morning that we did at Chestnut Park.
Yeah,
and. But some people refer to the chip as like they think of the storage media, the compact flash card, the SD card, and
well, now those cards, of course.
Yeah, well, but you'd be surprised. I'm pretty sure Matt knows it's interchangeable. But there are people who have, when I've taken the chip out, they're like, "Wow, that comes out of there?"
Yeah,
and it's like, we just Cedric the engineer had a laugh over that one.
Well,
it's true.
We need to do something.
Yeah, what's that?
We need to.
Open up the phone
lines.
All right, we will do that in a minute. Let me give out the phone numbers again. If you want a free copy of Topaz Clarity, we're going to take the 5th caller here in just a minute. Let me hand out the numbers. Locally, it's 727-441-3000. Toll free, 866-826-1340. Get your dialing fingers ready because the 5th caller, starting now, will win themselves a free copy of Topaz Clarity. $50 plug-in. So give us a call. You could be the winner. You don't have to be on the air. You'll just win it. Cedric will get your information, and we'll go from there. So give us a call. All right. But back to the camera industry stuff. We will. We were talking about some of the cameras,
right?
And the Fuji is certainly a trendsetter, to say the least.
I particularly think with that focusing aid.
Yep.
Because I really see that is the biggest drawback to the mirrorless cameras, point and shoots all the way along. Every time they try and say that there's some way to manually focus them, that you really can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I really see that. That's a trend that hopefully will continue.
Yep. I think so. I think the manufacturers are figuring it out that there is definitely a consumer market for this, and they'll sell some cameras, which will keep them in business. So that's a good thing. Boy, the phone lines are lit up here. Keep trying, folks.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. So with that in mind, the There was an area I was going to go, and I had a senior moment. Shocking for someone as young as myself. I thought that would have been you, Lou, having a senior moment. But that's my weekly senior joke. We have to get a sponsor for that.
Yeah, right.
Okay. We did a photo walk on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I did two on Saturday. So, for you that, want to keep up, I know that'd be too much for you, Lou. I gave you that one assignment. That was enough. But we shot the moon set, the full moon setting into the Gulf of Mexico Saturday morning. Mm-hmm. So I got up about 5:30, 5 o'clock, somewhere along in there, and we went down and had a great group. About 10, 12 photographers got up early enough, and we were down along Coachman Park this time. We go all over Pinellas County. You can't really shoot the moonset from Hamilton County, or not Hamilton, Hillsborough. You can probably shoot in Hamilton County, wherever that is. So we did in Clearwater this time, and the weather really cooperated with that as well. We had a nice moonset, had Memorial Bridge in the foreground and all. But after that, I did and we'd never done one before. We did a photo walk to Heritage Village, which of course we've done those before, but and we've got our winner. Cedric has given me the thumbs up, and so if you were interested in the Clarity plug-in, you can continue to call in. But we're out. We have a winner, and Cedric will get me that information in a second. We did a second one to Heritage Village, which was just for point-and-shoots and/or cell phones, and we had a great time.
I would have had a good time with that.
Yeah. I had my little Ricoh. Teresa took her Canon G12, which I've been real high on as well. I've owned a couple of the G series from Canons. We had another photographer, Joe, who was along, and he had a real relic. This was a Sony, and I can remember having to special order these. It wasn't the early Sony Mavica. It was the high-end one. You could only get 4 pictures on a floppy disk. Yeah, I said floppy disk. And
I remember those cameras.
Yeah, this one had a really nice electronic viewfinder and all. It was, of course, it had the big screen on the back, but this was the high-end one, the 868 or something like that. And he had one of those that recorded to floppies. He also had another little Fuji or something, too. But that talk about a walk down memory lane.
Yeah,
he said he picked it up at a garage sale. And so as we were walking around, I was talking to Joe a little bit, and I said to him, "Hey, do you have problems getting floppy disks for this thing? I mean, that's like having a film camera. What stores have film anymore?" And he said, "Well, at first I thought it was going to be a problem, and when I finally found a store that would order these things, I special ordered some floppies. And then I started looking in garage sales, and they're all over the place." He says, "The boxes aren't even open. They're still wrapped in cellophane, And it's like,
well, I wonder how he gets that into his computer, because the original plan was you took your floppy disk out of the camera and stuck it into your computer.
What could be more convenient than a floppy disk, I tell you.
Right.
Well, Toshiba, I think he said it was Toshiba. They made one of the last like floppy to USB adapter or
something
drives, and he's got one of those.
Oh, okay.
And believe it or not, I have it's not made by Mac. I forget who it is, but on the Apple side, I have a floppy disk thing that's to USB that even under the most current version, which is
Lion or something.
I think it's Domestic Short Hair 13 or something, but it's some kind of cat, and there's still drivers for it. So if somebody's got to have it, if you got a floppy disk, you got all these images on, believe it or not, I can probably get those images off for you. But that would be something I wouldn't wait on a long time. The last one of those will eventually die, but
technology has certainly moved on.
Yeah. We really need to have a little party for the passing of the floppy disk. Well, and truthfully, CDs and DVDs went the same way. Apple was the first, major computer company, if not the computer company, the first of all, that dropped floppies, and everybody was like, apples out of their mind. But I mean, Jobs saw what the writing was.
Right.
They were also the first company to drop CDs, DVDs off of many of their computers. There are still models that you've got the bigger iMacs and stuff, but many of the notebook type they're dropping the floppies. Yeah. USB 3, or they've even pretty much done away with FireWire on some of them. You know, so it's starting to change, and that's just technology moving on. Just is what it is.
Yeah.
So we've got another email question in here. This is from Sue, and she says, "Big Box Best Buy has a great deal on memory cards," and and all of the retailers pretty much can do that. Not trying to push B&H over Best Buy, but a lot of times people say, where should I buy these? And if you're in a hurry, certainly local, but places to look locally that are in a major market. Sometimes I've gotten good deals at Best Buy, Office Depot, Staples. Any of those from time to time can have some pretty good deals.
And in a pinch, Walmart's got them.
Yeah, Walmart. It's hard to find compact.
Compact flash.
Yeah, the compact flash cards anymore.
Right, at Walmart. But
yeah.
I remember last time I was there were some there, if I remember, but they mostly have the SD cards.
SD cards, yeah.
And I think I did see a few Sony type or whatever.
Yeah. And but still, the best deals when I start looking is the online retailers. But their deal is usually for multi-packs. Yeah, so the local guys, they buy the deals on the singles, but you really want to save some money, look at some of the multi-packs online. But, that's an area where the online retailers have come under some fire because, believe it or not, that's one of the most counterfeited things coming out of China. And they're the biggest violator of trademarks and everything that way. But there has been for quite a few years now a lot of counterfeit cards on the market that go dirt cheap. And eBay was the first to get flooded with them because they look, just from the picture on the website, they look legitimate. It looks just like a SanDisk or a PNY or a Kingston or a Lexar. And when you get it, though, the thing doesn't work, or it says it's 32 gigs, but somehow I only get 1 gig of pictures on it. What's up with that?
Well, and that's the fact of the matter with something like that.
Yeah.
You've got to buy it from somebody that's reputable, not just something off of eBay.
Yeah, for sure.
Or the equivalent. But that brings up an interesting subject. I was reading an article where a person had sent in a question, which is, how big of a memory card should I be using?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's I've seen that change. When did you get started working for Dodds? What year was that? You remember?
Oh, 1994.
1990. That was 1912. That was it. Yeah. So 1994.
Yeah. So it was before the digital.
Yeah. And but in the early days of digital, I can remember selling like 64 megabyte cards, 32 megabyte cards, and I can remember the year right before Christmas. It was probably 99. We were selling like 128 meg cards, and then there were no 256s. They had to cut it in half. It was like the 196s.
Oh, right. I remember the odd ones, the 196s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then 256s.
Yeah, and then they got 512s. Yeah, they stopped.
Yeah.
The 196 or whatever it was the last of the really odd ones.
Well,
and it sold for over $200. Yep. And we got some in at the Ritz I was working at, and they flew out the door like that. And I can remember people saying, because they said, "Oh, you got one," but you know what? I would never trust all of my eggs in one basket. You just can't trust those 196 meg cards, And now we got gigabytes of cards.
Right. Well, and I can remember when I bought my first digital big camera, the Olympus E10.
Yeah.
I think I had two 512s, and I was like, "Oh, I have over a gig. I
Yeah.
can take pictures forever.
Yeah, how could I ever take that many pictures?
Yeah.
That I'd need a gig of storage. And people would ask me back then,
Sure.
you know, what should I get? You know, I'm pretty comfortable with those 32 meg cards. And you know, when you got comfortable with 32, you went to 64, and then 128. Now, when I talk to people about that, it's that same kind of argument. It's like, you know, I really like these 8 gig cards. Those 32 gigs, I don't think you can trust them. But in 2 years, the 32 gigs will be the norm.
Right.
And we'll be saying that same thing about, you know, those 128 gig cards, you just can't trust them. And so it's just where your comfort level is. And as technology marches on, your comfort level has to go up.
Yeah.
Because try finding a 64 meg comp. I can't even say that in a straight face. Find a 64 meg card today.
Oh, wait a minute. I shot a raw image with my D800.
Yeah.
My card's full.
Yeah, I shot my one photo. Now what do I do? Yeah, so, you know, cards, my thing really is the bigger the better.
Yeah,
And I think they're reliable. Buy from a name brand one. And then the second thing is, see, one of the things that I'm more likely to do, the older I get, as I get almost to your age, the things that happen are, where did I put that damn thing? And did I put it in this pocket? So this is the card I shot. And so you really have to concentrate on card management. I make sure that I don't lose cards. But the reality of it is, an 8 gig card you will fill up, particularly as the resolution increases and it holds less and less pictures. So I'm more likely to lose pictures, not because it's a big card and the technology's bad or isn't up to
Or corrupt.
standards, it goes corrupt. I'm more likely myself to lose it, and I think most listeners, most users, are more likely to lose it. So if you think about it, what's the safest place for your card? It's in the camera. So if you don't have to take the card out of the camera other than to download pictures, how likely are you to lose those pictures when you're managing on a trip 4, 5, 6, 10 cards on a 2-week trip? Now you got a management issue. If you only have 2 cards to keep track of, that's the way to go.
That's somewhat of an issue, although I have to say it depends on the kind of trip you're on.
Sure.
If you're carrying a laptop, you know, at the end of the day, that's another story.
Sure.
But one of the things that I happen to believe in, and having come up in those early days of people having multiple cards, and you can still buy them.
Sure.
Little card holders.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
cheap. They're $10, $20.
Yeah.
You want to keep track of your cards? Use a card holder.
Yeah, that's
Don't
what
put
I
them
use.
in your pocket.
Yep. Yeah, well, and the other advantage is I keep a business card in it, so if I lose my case, they have a way to contact me. Try writing on an SD card your name, address, and phone number. Lots of luck with that.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing is, what happens if you drop your card into a lake? You know, it just accidentally falls out of your pocket while you're jumping across a stream, or, you know, you're shooting around the water. The card case that I use, it's made out of foam and it floats and it's neon yellow. Yeah, it's waterproof, so that you can actually see it floating on the water.
Is that an OtterBox?
No, I actually got it at North Tampa.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't look like an OtterBox, but it could be. They have a real distinct style. But and then I manage my cards. I can tell which ones are shot or not by whether I put them in upside down. Or not. Yeah.
And one of the things, of course, you know, there's probably some reasons that it doesn't work. It depends on what you need and how fast a card you need and some things like that. But in changing technology, it gets a little difficult.
Yep.
But one of the things that I sometimes did in order to keep track is I had several different brands.
Right.
You know, and, you know, I might have the SanDisk in and then go to a Lexar and blah, blah, blah. And that way I knew I shot the SanDisk, so the Lexar is okay to use.
Yeah, there you go. Did we get a winner? We'll read that name on the air, so to speak, and let them know that they won, and we'll do that in a second. Cedric's busily copying some information down for me. Yeah, but I think you know, it's not that I'm any prognosticator on this, but
they'll continue to get bigger.
Yeah. Getting back to Best Buy, though, I think they're going to have to go through a reorganization here real soon.
Well, and I've seen some differences in them. I went there looking for some things.
Yeah.
Where they used to have aisles.
Mm-hmm.
They've trimmed down the inventory.
Yeah.
There's no longer the huge selection that I expected. I was kind of like, I really expected to see more than that.
Yeah, well, that's maybe a start of their reorganization. Yeah. The winner of the plug-in, Topaz Clarity, is Dennis from Brandon, Florida.
Oh,
so
right.
Congratulations, Dennis. This is an electronic download. We'll get you the link and everything, but I've got your phone number. I also know that you're a member of the group here locally, and I'll contact you via email and get you your serial number, and you can get your electronic download for Mac or PC, whatever you're using. So congratulations on that. Looking forward to seeing some of your pictures with that new plugin, and you'll hopefully have time this week to catch one of the 4 free webinars.
Yeah,
explaining
check the
use.
FLCCP website and see if you can get one of those. I plan to.
Yeah, there's one on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, and then another webinar on Friday. So they got 4 coming up this week. The product just launched, I think, Thursday or Friday last week. Okay. We got a few more minutes to go, but next week, what do you think? We're going to have a guest on next week. Nori from Cruise Planners, I think it is. I should probably know that. She'll probably kick me next week, but who is working on a cruise, has put together a wonderful cruise it's open to anyone, but we're certainly going to be promoting it through the Florida Center for Creative Photography, but anyone can go. It is a fall foliage, fall color cruise.
Something that we don't see down here.
Yeah. I probably ought to explain to the listeners what fall is and what foliage is and why there are fall colors. But I'll forego that. Cedric told me we have less than 4 minutes, so I can't explain this whole cycle. But it'll be to the Northeast. We will have some time in Portland, Maine, up in Bar Harbor around Acadia National Park, one of the first national parks, and up into Canada, the provinces of Canada and things. So it's a wonderful cruise, 7 days. We will actually fly into Boston, and we will have a custom tour, a whole day, literally. We'll be picked up at the hotel, and they'll take care of our luggage to the cruise ships. And we get a full day of photography in Boston, and then they will drop us off at the cruise ship. We'll get on that, sail away, and 7 days later, we're back in Boston. And it'll be a wonderful time. We have plenty of shore excursions. I will be teaching some workshops, so people that go. Now, if you're thinking, wow, fall's coming right up, guess what? This is such a popular cruise that
it's sold out.
2013 is gone. It sold out back in like 2011 or 2012. We're talking September of 2014. So we'll have a great week of cruising. And it's not one of those cruise lines that has issues with their ships and power and, and sewage, and maybe they capsize now and then. It is with, I think it's Norwegian Cruise Lines.
Yes.
And it's going to be a great trip. We'll have more information. But Nori's going to be our guest next week, and we'll talk about cruising and travel and some of this. And then you and I will be talking about just some travel tips. We had our friend Jim Caldwell on the show a couple of weeks ago. We talked about travel. And you, I, and Nori will be chatting about planning for trips and things like passports and, immunizations and all these kind of details that whether you're going on a cruise with us or heading on a safari to Africa, just a lot of good information to know. So
they don't have malaria in Canada, do they?
No. I don't even think they have mosquitoes in Canada, but no, that's not true either. The most mosquito-infested place I have ever been was up in Canada.
Yeah. Up north.
Yeah, up near the Arctic Circle. Mm-hmm. We were in Churchill, Manitoba, which many people know as the polar bear capital of the world. And I was there in the spring one time, right around middle to third week of June, which is the longest day of the year. And that is prime breeding season for many of what we would consider exotic birds. You know, we only see them migrating. They nest up there near the Arctic Circle, and they fly down into Central America, South America. So we may not really see them except as they migrate through. And so I was doing video work at that time then, and the sun really never set because it was near the longest day of the year. You would dip down by the horizon, and maybe you'd see like just a sliver of it for an hour or two, and then at 4 in the morning it's coming back up, and it was insane. But here I was in summer, and I was wearing like long sleeve cotton shirts with big heavy wool jacket over it, so that the mosquitoes couldn't bite through everything. My wife had a picture of me operating the video camera, and my one hand was literally black with mosquitoes, where I had a glove I would wear, and I took the glove off for just a minute or so, and these mosquitoes had covered it. It was interesting, to say the least, but is what it is. So, no, our trip, we won't be worrying about mosquitoes in September in Canada. It'll be a great time. Well, I hear the music. Yep. I think it's time for us to say goodbye.
Yes, it is.
Lou, it's been a lot of fun chatting. We covered some good topics tonight. You have anything you want to say to the listeners?
Have a good evening. Thank you.
I think we will do that. Where are we headed? We headed to Capitol Beer House tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And we'll be live from the Capitol Beer House next week. Join us for Picture This. Thanks to everyone. Have a great evening, and congratulations, Dennis. Good night.